Hello, this is Chris Parker, and I had a conversation with Damian Nomura from Mundane AI. And he is a founder and he's running an AI adoption agency based out of Switzerland, working with businesses who are starting and on the journey of infusing AI into their work, into their culture, into their strategy. And we talked about the whole spectrum of AI adoption and implementation. So, hey, Damon, why would it be really valuable for people to listen to this?
Why would it be valuable is because we are humans and we are companies and we're interacting with AI. And there is a missing relationship between the two. And what you're learning is on how to build this relationship and also on how to start, because we all need to start somewhere, and many of us don't know where to. So here you might find some clues.
The Business Simplicity Podcast, where we learn about strategies and tactics to succeed through simplicity, with your host, Chris Parker.
Welcome back to the Business Simplicity Podcast. This is Chris Parker, and I'm talking to a fascinating individual, Damian Nomura, who runs Mundane AI, and that's MUNDAINE .ai. So there's an AI in the mundane as well. I'm not sure if it's normally spelled that way, but I really see it when I'm looking at it. And Damien and I are members of the Gen AI Circle. It's a community of AI thinkers, doers, strategists. We're kind of surfing this wave, really at the bleeding edge sometimes on what's possible and how things are changing on a minute by minute basis. And Damien is working with organizations basically to uplift their AI awareness and running hackathons and essentially helping humans, people in organizations adopt AI for, I guess, the power of the positive. And so we're going to unpack a lot of that. And I'm just so excited and thankful, appreciative of Damien for joining. So, Damien, welcome. Maybe if you can kick us off, and I'm gonna plant a seed with you. I know the story about you leading from working as a waiter, coming all the way up into being this like international AI adoption expert. So, um, maybe introduce yourself by telling a little bit of that origin story, which I thought was just marvelous.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chris. You know, I just recently heard this quote, and I think this reflects it perfectly. AI leads us directly to results in the times of today. We just have to drop in a prompt and we get the result immediately. So what we're missing on is the path between the start and the finish line. And sometimes the path doesn't matter because sometimes we just need the results. And sometimes the path does matter. And knowing the difference makes a difference. And I think this reflects perfectly well on my path of coming from a waiter to CIO, CAIO, and owning my own international AI adoption agency. So I think it's important to understand that we we all are humans. We all have our pathways. And in the times of today, where so much is artificial, it is super important to remember what we as humans are, because this is what differentiates us from AI and from the machines. And sometimes we still have to walk our paths to actually be different than the machines and not being replaced, but actually being able to evolve into a new space, into a space that actually serves us as humans as well, and not that we end up serving the machines.
And by path, um, the path to the prompt, path to the answer. What do you mean by path in the concept of AI?
So I just, as a matter of fact, I just had this last night. I was um, I was working on a prototype for an automation, and I usually do it quite manually first. So I used Claude, and I prompted Claude directly, and the results were so good. So I was like, okay, proof of concept is here. Now I'm building the automation behind it. I went into Make, and I pulled in all those elements. And I realized that, for example, web search wasn't in there included. So the results obviously were much worse than what I had in Claude. And also the system prompts were not in are not there if you're just using the API directly. So the quality was less. And I realized, okay, what can I do? I went into research and I could have done a custom API call. Now I'm not a developer myself, really. Try to avoid writing code myself. And so I went back to using Claude and I realized this is, in terms of AI, this is exactly the journey that I'm missing out on now. And I don't even know how to get to the results that Claude, like the application Claude, is delivering me. So I'm having holes here
Hmm.
and I do not develop myself. So I went back to actually learning on how to do the API call properly and then handle all the data salad you get back from
Yeah, yeah.
it.
No, I think the way I describe that sometimes is because the answers are there, and I think this has a fun. And I'm still going to go back to the waiter question and pick that apart a little bit. But with LLMs and Gen AI and agentic frameworks, the answers, the results can be there, and then the way I simplify it, maybe oversimplify it, is what is the question? It's like how can you refine the question? And that could be a very simple thing, like, okay, how do you ask the right prompt, or how do you create the whole prompt chain, and how do you prepare the data, and how do you optimize and refine that? um and I think this is something that's fundamental, that's going to shift the power dynamics in organizations, because in the past, managers were the authoritative answer provider. And now the answers are there. The answers are commoditized, they're democratized. The answers are better answers can come from just the machine. And so the actual wisdom is to be asking the right question. And maybe that's another way of of actually preparing the right path. Um, how do you see that? Meaning, what is the impact of path making in an
Mhm.
organization?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I've been through various positions in my life, and I kept seeing that the question is being overlooked and left behind. The problem is being overlooked and left behind. And that usually has to do that the subject matter experts didn't have enough volume to speak up,
Hmm.
meaning it usually was driven by the management what projects we're tackling and what the problem is, or maybe not even caring about the problem itself. Um, I could put it I could put it that way. I keep saying using AI properly, and this is an amazing opportunity for us as humanity. Um, I have this I have this idea of the better human you are, the better AI user you will be. And what do I mean by that?
Hmm.
Just think about prompting and prompt engineering. Uh, when you're not aware of the problem, when you're not aware of what you actually want, then you'll just prompt anything. And I mean, I did that as well, and I keep doing that as well. I'm just dropping in any random prompts, and I just realize, okay, that wasn't really good. As the results are mediocre. Um, and for many, the results already look stunning, but they are mediocre if you know what it could do if you properly prompt engineer. And properly prompt engineering means I need to know what I want, and I need to structure it in a structured way. So what do I need for that as skills? I need self-reflection, right? I need to reflect on myself. What do I really want to know? Because also often I think I know what I want, but that's not what I really want, right? And so I need to reflect on myself. What do I really want? And then break it down into chunks and steps of what I want the AI to do. So, and being self-reflective, how do I get to that skill? Is by actually reflecting myself in my everyday life, right? And what I'm doing and how I'm acting towards my partner, my friends, my children, my parents, whoever, right? So that's one part. And the other part is also that is huge is resilience. There's so much coming up every single second. Right? There's so many new companies popping out like mushrooms. And it's also, to me, it's overwhelming. And to all of us, it is overwhelming. Whoever says it's not overwhelming is just simply lying or ignoring.
Or their eyes are closed. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
Yeah.
Um, so re resilience is a huge skill in the times of today, because the ability to bounce back quickly and go from overwhelmed to, okay, but now what's possible? What is it really? And what's possible with it? And what can we do? What can we build? What can we create? This is where the true power lies.
Mm.
And how do you get to being resilient is, I mean, one of the best ways I know is everything around mindfulness. Right? And so mindfulness is also leading you to your inner self, to your inner child, connecting with everything around you, um, living in the moment. We all know the philosophies around that, um, which eventually will make you a better human because you will interact differently with other humans. You will not be so problem
Yeah.
focused, but more
Wow.
solution focused.
Well, that one thought, and then I'll get into the mindfulness is as you said, a lot of, I'm kind of interpreting, a lot of initiatives, projects. There's a quote that like 70 or 90% of projects fail in enterprises. McKinsey, Harvard Business Review. Something. I think most of those projects should never have happened because it's typically they shouldn't have started. Don't talk about the failing. Let's talk about the starting. Just don't start. Because most of it's ego based. It's from a manager or an executive who doesn't understand what the actual problem is. They're probably not very empathetic. They're probably not um they're starting these things for the wrong reason, and then maybe a lot of these things shouldn't happen. So maybe it's the the immune system of the organization working in a positive way, and preventing these kind of changes. But one thing I just want to grab onto that, um mindfulness, meditation, calm, I find as a survival tactic now with so much overwhelm going on. So this is something that really resonates with me. Is this part of your work when you're working AI adoption? Are you having mindful? I hope you are, because you're doing these hackathons. Do you start with a moment of zen and reflection before you start hacking away? It's like, how do you bring these things together?
Yeah. So one of my principles is AI is so powerful and whatever is coming. I mean, talking about AI agents, talking about quantum computing as well. I mean, I don't even want to go there. Um, we need all our resources available. And I mean, really all. And we can't be caught up in things that used to be deemed unprofessional or something like that. And I'm talking about, for example, mindfulness practices, breath work, meditation, visualizations as well. Um, and so we need all of our resources available. And that's why I'm including this as well. Also, I am very aware of that you can't just jump in and bring this in like that. You need to go step by step, really, and see also how ready the company culture is for that. But I mean, I keep coming back to the term common sense. And it is common sense that we need all of our resources available. And there are so many studies out there that prove that we are much more resourceful when we go into mindfulness and do due diligence there.
Hmm.
And so I would say it's not just like a cookie cutter process I'm doing there. I'm really, yeah, I need to see how aware they are already. But at some point, they will realize that they have to deal with the overwhelm.
Yeah.
And to me, these are the tools to use.
Yeah. Just to and do you guide these mindfulness? I'll just what's on my mind is I'll plug someone else. Sorry, we're in the but Charlotte Mader, she lives in Annecy. She's a leadership coach and mindfulness instructor, and I've been involved in just a couple of weeks ago. We were down in Saffron, a massive French company, and she ran a mindfulness session with like 20 middle managers, and it was really, the impact was great. I think it was really, and I believe that, yeah, let's call it the management science culture that we live in is starting to open up to these things, to realize that, well, hey, we are actually complete humans. Let's focus on the inner work as well as the intellectual work. And no, that's cool.
Yeah, that's breaking through more and more. There's also this elite executive, like young executive network, where I can see they do a lot of mindfulness treatments as well. And I
Mm.
think the new leaders are actually picking up to that. But you're not only having new leaders and startup companies you're working with, you also have established companies where there's different mindset, and you need to get in step by step. Still, I mean, from professional sports, we know it, and from high performance athletes, we know visualization techniques.
Yep.
And this is nothing more than mindfulness, really, where you visualize where you're actually the fastest lightning bolt on a sprint or whatever it is, or in a team, or all those huddle moments in football or wherever. Or I mean, this is where you bring yourself up to a into a high performance state. Right?
Well, when I was competitive rower in university back in California, and that was a while ago, but even then, they knew that the visualization of a race repeatedly had equal or better um, performance enhancements than the actual practice. I think it's because you could imagine. My interpretation was you could imagine the adrenaline, the intensity of a race, more than you could practice. Because you're
Yeah.
just out there in the water, and having a boat next to you that's a couple strokes ahead is a completely different experience than just kind of paddling along. So it's but taking reality to AI, you just got to tell this waiter story and how it brought you through to
Yeah,
automation
sure,
and to AI. Um,
sure.
well, I have a little story myself first. Is um, when I was involved in 2011, 12 in producing the feature film The Right Juice in Portugal. I was a first time producer with a very experienced team, and so it was basically in the way a lot. I was focusing on commercial stuff, but a lot of the people work and this creating a calm in this very hectic space. But one of the things I learned there was never come back empty handed. And it resonates with your story because because I was there and I didn't have like a role in the shoot and they needed stuff. Hey Chris, can you go get that? And then I would get like a production assistant or something who's from Portugal and say, okay, we need this. And what we clearly learned, even if we couldn't find that, come back with something that would be close enough, so then the team could continue. So even if we don't solve the exact problem, you got to come back with something to move forward. But over to the life in a restaurant.
Yeah. Yeah, so I was barkeeper, waiter, and catering employee for about 5 years. Um, and we had, I mean, you're making miles, right? You're walking, walking, walking. You just have to imagine you walk so many miles every single day. So your feet are your direct feedback. And in this particular restaurant where I work, we had those salt and pepper grinders on the table. And it was protocol that once the dinner or lunch was done, you have to collect them and bring them back. And if you would have just collected all the plates and come back and you realize you left them behind, then you would have to walk empty-handed back to the table and bring them back. Um, and you have the feedback into your feet in the very same evening that this
Yeah.
was not a good idea. So you had to come up with strategies on how to be as efficient as possible while still remaining some kind of elegance. I mean, you can't just pile everything on top. Um, so in this, I never realized that this was an essential skill for me until the point where I started in process engineering. And I realized when designing the processes, this is exactly what I was doing in the restaurant, because you have to think about what makes the most sense and what you pick up from where. I mean, processes are nothing more than input and then a task, and then you have the output. So on a more wider angle, that's exactly the same thing as I was doing in the restaurant. So it's exactly that skill. And I also realized that many of my colleagues or all of my colleagues didn't have that skill developed in that way because they never went from the ground up, because they just went to university, studied, and then just entered the business. And then they're trying to understand what the people in the business are really doing. Or actually, they have to make sure that they just keep their positions because that's in the management game, right? So yeah, I learned that this path, and here we're back to the path, right? Walking the path or going my journey has helped me so much in filling all those gaps so that I was able to do the very same thing later. And I'm
Well, if we grab onto that,
Mhm.
it resonates with the other messages, meaning it was through self reflection,
Yeah,
because you were also, it was unspoken, but it was clearly you were there to perform your role. So okay, you're there with an inner pride, an inner drive to fulfill your role, and you were, aware enough, mindful enough to realize that your feet hurt, you know, later. And then you had this self-reflection to say, okay, well, wait, how can I optimize this? How can I achieve this task with less suffering and do some, some innovation in there. And I think this um is this not the story of AI adoption now?
it is.
Yeah.
It is. Absolutely.
Yeah. Sorry. When you told me that story before, I was just like, oh, wow, this is just simplifies the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I think maybe humanizes it for people, because when I sometimes give these intro to AI for non-technical people sessions, there's like these big eyes, and you're just like, oh, like no, chill, tranquilo. It's you just uh, start and understand and reflect and see what irritation and pain you can minimize with this and iterate into it. And yeah,
Yeah. It is on much shorter cycles though.
yeah.
Because you have to keep, I mean, you do that multiple times a day, the reflection and the
Mm.
optimization and all of that. Um, and yeah, I mean, we're talking what you just mentioned is also the resilience part here, with the overwhelm in that moment. And in a way, I mean, that's a cool analogy too. I mean, you can build up the resilience for your hurting feet, right?
Mm.
And just accept it and just go like, well, okay, they hurt. Or you can find a way of uh, of improving the process and of self-reflecting, and so they won't hurt as badly. Or you have more space to go for a run after. Well, probably won't go for a run after a shift, but it's. I mean, you don't have to lose the physical resilience part
Mm.
in this analogy, and the same goes in using AI. You can accept that that life is just getting unpredictable now, or that I might lose my job, and you can just stand there and build up resilience towards that. But this is not taking you anywhere. Right? And
If we really turn the page towards AI adoption in your work there, um, you are serving businesses primarily, on this AI adoption journey. And can you tell me a little about like the pain, the sore feet that they call you for? Because there's, maybe it's just curiosity, or maybe it's FOMO, or it's hurting feet. What is the trigger for organizations, and what is the path that you typically bring them through? Um, and I know a little bit about your philosophy of infusing AI, and I love that word, infusing AI into the organization, into the strategy, into the business. So it's not a technical injection. Something else is going on. So
mhm,
why
mhm.
are people calling you, and what is the path you walk with them on?
Yeah. So one of the reasons really is FOMO. I mean, we all know how fast it's developing and the feeling of the train has already left the station. Um, this is the main driver. But just as we mentioned earlier, this is what they think the problem is, but this is not the problem, really. Um, what I'm seeing is that the actual pain is, or the grains that are there that are not smooth, are problems we should have solved already a long time ago. It's problems with having standard, or maybe not standard, but having good processes and the live processes, with automating stuff that should have been automated for a long time already, that due to many reasons haven't been. Digitization is a topic. Data cleanliness is another topic. So there are so many areas that actually hurt, that are the sore feet, and management or many managements are just waiting for this magic formula that is being sold to them also by many consultants, that this is the magic formula that will save you now.
Hmm.
And now with AI, there's even more possible than just with cloud computing, for example, which was one of those magic formulas. And so the expectations are also there that AI can solve now everything. And you need to dive in. AI can solve many things, but it's not the solution to everything. And really going through those gaps that have been created because of the steps they didn't take on their journey. This is one of the main challenges I face, and to also differentiate between, okay, this we should be using AI for, and this we shouldn't be using AI for. And I mean, we're not a company of thousands of people, right? So I need your employees to realize that. I need the subject matter experts, and this is what I just mentioned before, because they know what the pain really is. At the same time, I also need management because they have the overview, right? So we need the entire company. There's not one layer that we can just say, okay, we don't need you anymore, because we need all of them, and we need all of them working collaboratively together. And so this is one of the things I love about the hackathons I do. So in my program, we do a strategy part, where we sketch out the AI strategy and the use cases and governance framework and all of those things. But then we jump into the hackathon, and we form groups of around 4 or 5 people. You can imagine that collaboratively go from I don't know nothing about AI to I've built my first AI system. A proof of concept, fair enough, but still. And you create something. And I diversify those groups purposefully as well, because I need to have the, like, speaking in a generative way, not in a generic way, I need the toilet keeper and the CEO at the same table.
Hmm.
Right? I need them to work the problem collaboratively, because they both have views on a problem that do not necessarily match. So they need to bring it together. They need to melt all of this together and fuse it together. Because like this, we have a fair chance of being responsive to what's coming in the AI world.
I love it. And it's a bit similar to my practices where, co-creating these things, and it's not a consultant in a room with one manager, that's architecting and then forcing or imposing. I absolutely believe these are emergent discussions, because I don't think it's something that you could do at one moment in one closet with one person. It's many, many moments with many, many people. And it sounds like your hackathons kind of compress that and get them going. Um,
It's a kickstart, really,
it's a yeah, and
into this mindset.
I
Yeah.
guess there will be some tangible, AI automation output, but I would almost wonder if the um, intellectual uplift, the experience uplift, the togetherness uplift is maybe even more valuable. So then they can potentially take a next step with maybe a little less support from you. I don't know.
Exactly.
How do you balance that? Like when you get feedback from the sponsor, the buyer, the person who's paying the bill, um, there, what are the main points of value that they reflect back on and say, oh, that was cool and this was cool and this was really valuable. Thank you so much.
Yeah, the most valuable, that's difficult because there's so many valuable parts, and it really depends on the person and on what they're paying attention towards. Because I mean, culture also was one of the things consultants pushed for some time, and so it's also a pain point, and some companies are aware of this pain point. And I think to me, the biggest impact is on a cultural level, really,
Hmm.
because you move into a company that's ready to also compete with those AI native companies that are coming up now. And if you don't do those steps, then you're just not able to compete with them. Um, the tangible outcomes are are usually the first ones they really realize because they have a proof of concept.
Hmm.
And they usually are so good because you have the subject matter experts on there and also the managers, they understand why this is important, that they're more in the dilemma. So what are we actually moving towards a minimum viable product out of the proof of concept phase? Um, and so it's really like, okay, now we got to move,
Yeah.
right? And we have a lot of great ideas that we know are already working at hand.
So let me take it a slightly different direction. Because what you're talking about is resonating a lot, that these are journeys, meaning these aren't a one-time implement, set and forget. I
Yep.
think for me that is paramount to keep in mind with AI. And then, and I don't know the answer to this, so I'm curious really what your perspective or philosophy is on this. Is there's a lot of AI products that you can buy off the shelf and implement, and there's a lot of like integrators, like the big consultancies and stuff that would love to come in and do a project to deliver a product to you on you. Um, and as you're speaking, I'm wondering if there's a flaw in that, because these need to iterate. Would you argue a more build it yourself before buy it, or do it yourself before get a consultant, or how do you reconcile that with an organization, that buy versus build, and then ability to, let's call it agile, let's iterate, refine, improve over time.
Yeah.
What's your advice on that?
Yeah. Learn how to decide yourself. That's my advice, really.
Okay.
Um, because I mean, for some solutions, it's not worth creating something yourself or building something yourself. Sometimes it is paramount to build it yourself, and sometimes it's not an AI problem,
Hmm.
right? So, um, you need to, or my advice is to upskill internally, that you know what you're doing and that you know what you're deciding and that you don't need me anymore. And also coming back to your question from before, my goal always is to get rid. I keep telling my clients, I try to get rid of you as soon as possible. Don't take it personal, but that's just my approach.
Mm-hmm.
Not because I don't like you, not because I don't enjoy working with you, but because I want you to be able to do it yourself. And my mission is to upskill as many companies as possible. Still, I won't just jump off after the assignment, of course. If they need more support, then they get more support, of course. Um, but I need them to decide themselves, really, and to be competent. That's actually the thing. Become competent in the field of AI so that you can decide yourself whether you want to build it or whether you want to buy it. I mean, of course, for every single company, there are also different strategies on buy or build or whatever. Um, but you need to have that competence yourself. And I also don't want to learn everything about your bookkeeping strategies, what you build or buy, and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
That's not my cup of tea. That's the reason why I need you, because your company has all those different departments, which are all already competent there. And your aspiration really should be that every single one of them is becoming the best version of themselves.
So, couple more questions, but if a manager, executive, business owner is listening, and your strongest advice is upskill and uplift your people, what are three things they can do to start that, to execute that. So on Monday, they got 3 things, on their to-do list to upskill and uplift their staff in the domain of AI. What could those 3 things be?
Number 1, do it yourself.
Do what?
Upskill yourself.
How?
And enable yourself. Well, you can start in various ways. I mean, there is the way of just ask AI,
Use it. Do it. Yeah.
Use it. Yeah. Use whatever. And I mean, there are so many tools out there, and it doesn't really matter when you start. It doesn't matter which tool you use. Even though I'm not a huge fan of ChatGPT myself, but I keep advising them, if you start with ChatGPT, because it's just the most versatile tool, right?
Why are you not a fan of GPT? What's
because I feel from my use cases, it's just not the best tool.
Okay. I think it's a very excellent general use solution, but yeah. Okay.
It is a Swiss Army knife, and it works well for many things. I still feel it's not excellent. Well,
I love it. But, okay. So use it yourself. I love it that from a man, and I think it's a spot on answer, and then we'll get to the next 2 things. To do it yourself. I mean, this is something, the way I describe it when I give my little AI trainings, and if someone wants to join those, I just do it for my network. It's send me an email or to reach out to me. But I describe it like a sunset. You can read about a sunset, but unless you've experienced it, you've been out there and gazed at it, you've just, been in the glory of it, and then like, oh, those colors and that smell, the wind, I think AI is a similar thing. You have to you have to do it. You have to be there. So, okay. Next.
You have to walk the path.
Yeah.
There we go again. Right? You can't just read about it. Yeah. That's exactly that thing. So just play around with it and experiment.
And fail.
With childlike curiosity. That's what I keep saying. Childlike curiosity is one of the main skills in AI to move ahead in a quick way.
Beginner's mind. Go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Experiment and play with it. And then think about on how to encourage, maybe read a little bit about compliance and legal. That's a good idea, in particular as a business owner and when trying to spread it across the company. But then show it.
Maybe a real nice practical thing is if you haven't done it as a manager or something, just use GPT and ask it to tell you about the EU AI Act and just chat with it on that. That'd be just a great place to start, combining those.
Exactly. That's what I meant by ask AI. Ask it whatever you need to know. What do I need to know about AI or Gen AI or ChatGPT? That is a good starting point. Yes, I mean, of course, experts will tell me, but there are hallucinations and all of those things. True. But you will find out about that as well. Yeah. So experiment, play with it in the sandbox.
Never trust it with your life or anything that's important.
Yeah.
It's a great assistant that makes mistakes. Yeah.
Exactly. And just treat it as such. Of course, what helps a lot is to either go through a program or to research yourself on YouTube. I mean, that sounds like something that is not very professional, but if you look at developers, for example, for ages, they used Google and YouTube to create your solutions that you rely your business on. So it's
no, absolutely.
Might be a pro way to do it. And the one thing with just running around and watching YouTube videos is you can just spend a lot of time, and you also always get fractions of the knowledge. And so it makes sense to go through a program where somebody properly structured it. And also encourage your peers, first of all, to use it and start to create a buzz around it, and not like a hype, but that it's more buzzing, that you start speaking about it, that you, when you're standing at the coffee machine waiting for your turn to grab a coffee, that you might mention it, so that it's just, and this is what I mean by infusing. It's coming into our lives. It's already part of our lives, and we need to take it out of the shadow and really talk about it and exchange with one another, because there you also realize that the human connection, when you exchange your minds, that you will learn a lot more around AI. And I mean, we can see it in the Gen AI circle. When we exchange with one another and openly share, then our like consolidated knowledge is just growing exponentially.
Yeah, no, I get it. So, um, and I would invite people to check out mundane.ai. I've got one more question left, so before we wrap up. Um, and also the Gen AI circle, if you're kind of more a bit more of an advanced doer or thinker on this, because this is like bleeding edge stuff, then consider the Gen AI circle. Uh, Damian and I are part of the adoption implementation track. And so, we're working on a playbook of adoption implementation. And I'm sure we'll talk about more about that on the podcast as we go. But consider the Gen AI circle. But you can also call Damian at Mundane AI, and he can run one of these programs that has the AI strategy, along with guardrails and compliance, and then get into practical hackathon and doing. I would love to be a part of one of those things. So, but my final question is, and I know the answer of this because we've already talked about it, but I think it's brilliant and worthy of sharing that the impact of AI, which will remove the mundane, if you will, it opens us up for so much more. And I think this is I'd like to wrap up with your deep intent, your purpose, your motivation for what you're doing. Can you unpack that a little bit? Because it's not about implementing tech, and that's what I adore about our moments together. Where is this going, and how do you see the future revealing itself to us as we infuse AI into our lives to create more beauty, more
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Where are you investing yourself in ensuring this thing goes?
So I need to take this one step back so that it's tangible. When I started with AI 8 years ago, I realized this, like, where are people going? Because it's so good. I was acting as a CIO. Where are people? What will our people do with? I mean, yeah, I mean, we could actually replace all of them within a half year or something like that. And Mo Gaudat has put it beautifully in his book Scary Smart, where he mentioned, imagine us in the future, we're sitting at a campfire, and there might be two reasons why we're sitting at this campfire. Either we have handed off all the mundane tasks to AI and created so much space to actually be human and to actually enjoy life and to actually do purposeful things with our time, or we're actually hiding from the machines because we've created a very doomed scenario and nature is the only place.
Skynet is hunting you. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So when I heard that, I was like, yes, that's exactly what I thought about when I seen it. And my mission is to work for the first scenario and not the second one. So,
Yeah.
so with AI, what is happening is we're becoming much faster. We can have better results. We can scale our revenue and all of those beautiful things. And what we really should do, or what's happening, is we're having more space. And if we're just letting people go, then we will create a doom scenario because we will have a lot of jobless people out there. At the same time, we also know, actually, we know 8 hours or even more per day is not productive. We also know 5 days a week work is not productive. This is not where we're on our peak as humans. So it already makes sense in the times of today that people work less. And with AI, we're making much more money, so they can keep their salary or even make a little bit more. And they'll spend that on their free time too. So also economy-wise, that would be a smart move anyways. But let's move away from strategy and economy. What is happening is that all of a sudden people have more time to deal with themselves, with their families, with their friends. So we're becoming much more human, and we will be forced to ask ourselves what is really important, because we can't hide ourselves in a 9 to 5, 5 days a week. where we're basically absent for families. And on the weekend, we just want to recover. And so this is what I'm working towards, a world where we have more space to be human and to be conscious. By that, also interacting better with AI and leveraging AI better, and in a more harmonious way, and in a symbiosis between machine and human.
Thank you for the work you're doing. Look forward to sitting at that fire, not
and
afraid of Skynet, making our s'mores or whatever we're doing, and reflecting and being human together. Love it. Damian Nomura, founder of Mundane AI. In the show notes, I'll put the link to his website. I'll put a link to his LinkedIn so you can follow and connect with him there. And also I'll put a link to the Gen AI Circle in case you're interested in that. So Damian, thank you so much. This was great.
Thank you very much. It was awesome.
Thank you for listening. Visit ebullient.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast on your favorite player.